Thank you. Did you? How many of you believe that you have to be wealthy to be healthy? Does God only love rich people? So if God loves everybody equally, no matter what color, what race, what nationality, what income bracket, then God's remedies should be what? Affordable for who? For the poorest, and it should also be available for who? So a God remedy should be affordable and accessible anywhere that you live in this world. This one? Thank you. Press it to the... Technical difficulties already. Hang on. Turn the clock off. Okay, nothing's working, so let's go forward. Can I get you to open that up for me? 50 years ago, I was hitchhiking around the world, and I wandered into a Seventh-day Adventist mission, and I learned about the Sabbath, I learned about vegetarianism, and I also learned about charcoal as a medicinal. And the first time I saw it, I saw this younger couple, thank you. I saw this younger couple carrying a limp. Want to use? Okay, next slide. Next slide. So at lunchtime, I asked the doctor, "What did you do for that little girl?" Because I saw the couple walking out later, and the girl. When I saw the little girl, she was limp in the father's hands. I thought, well, she's dead. And he said, oh, we took off the clothing and I put on a charcoal poultice, and I thought, black magic. You know, I thought, these Adventists, they are something else. And here, 50 years later, because of that experience, my wife and I have a business called Charcoal House, and we sell charcoal all over the world. Next slide. And this is what we're talking about, just charcoal. Everybody knows what charcoal is, correct? One of our customers, we sold, we easily filled this tent with charcoal to Monsanto because they poisoned one of their pineapple plantations, and they needed to clean the soil, and they did it in 24 hours by applying charcoal, and they came back and planted organic pineapple. So our primary business today is not medicinal. It's primarily commercial industrial. We have clients, NASA is one of our clients. We sent a prototype for the first manned flight to Mars. We deal with the military and large R&D companies. That's not how we started. We started in our basement. We packaged charcoal by hand. I look just as black as you do after packaging charcoal all day long. And little by little, it caught on, and it started people showing more and more interest. But I'm assuming most of you are Adventists, and if not, let it be known that most Adventists know something about charcoal as a medicinal. I've heard so many stories the last few days about charcoal that I thought, what are we doing here? We just need to put a microphone in everybody's hand. Next slide, please. So I came back from doing development work several years ago, and I had worked in different countries, and I'd seen natural medicine work when there was no availability of anything else. And charcoal was one of the favorite remedies. I had, at one point, I got flesh-eating disease. I was working in Micronesia on a remote island, and I got flesh-eating disease on this leg, and I almost died. I made peace with God one night, and I knew I was not going to see the morning. But obviously, God had mercy, so I'm here to tell you that charcoal works, because something came to my mind, and I had a hole next to my knee about that big, and I used my pliers to pull the dead flesh out, because I had to pack that knee with charcoal, and the infection stopped. It had eat holes up to my knee, and it had already started a hole here, and it stopped immediately. After years and years of working with charcoal, it suddenly dawned on me, how does charcoal work so fast with bacterial infections? You want to know the reason? Bacteria, they're not very big, right? They're very small. Do bacteria have teeth to bite and chew their food? They don't, but they do have endo and exotoxins that they secrete that, digest tissue. And when you apply charcoal neutralizes the endoexotoxins, and within a short time, the bacteria start starving to death. That's the mechanism. And I've seen it with gangrene, flesh-eating disease, all kinds of wounds. When I was in Nepal, they brought in a kid that had a hole in his leg about this deep, and it was not healing, and I just packed it with charcoal. When we were in Uganda, there was a guy came in with his finger had been crushed under a boulder, and it looked really bad. He hadn't been able to sleep for weeks, and Kimberly insisted that we put his hand in some charcoal waters. So we put his hand in charcoal water. We kept talking, and within minutes, the pain was gone, and he's listening to us talk about charcoal with his mouth open. At the end of that, Kimberly made a poultice for him. We put it on his finger. And I asked the man, would you mind if I pray with you? And he went like this. I didn't know he was Muslim, but the next morning, he came back. You would not know he had been sick. There was no pain on his face. He was completely rested. He had slept all night. He'd gone to the market and told everybody to come over and listen to the charcoal talks. Next slide. Now, Ellen White. Is there anybody here who has never heard of Ellen White? Looks like most everybody has. Ellen White wrote to the famous John Harvey Kellogg, if I could give this remedy some outlandish name that no one knew but myself, it would have greater influence. What's she talking to? She's talking about our craving for something unknown. If we don't know what it is, then what? It must have more power over us, right? But charcoal is so common, it's so ubiquitous. When we're in Africa, the goats and the dogs pee on it. And so we teach them how to wash it, clean it with boiled water, to grind it, then sift it and sift it again until they make a powder. And they can use plain charcoal that they cook with. We have seen so many miracles. God's arm is not shortened just because you cannot get activated charcoal here in the closest ABC or health food store. God works with charcoal, and when charcoal doesn't work, you know what? There's another remedy there. Within arm's reach, God has his remedies. They're affordable and they're accessible, and water is another great remedy. And I've heard stories about herbs here today. They all work. And if one doesn't work, there's another one just nearby that will. Next slide, please. Now, why would I write a book and include medical freedom in it? Because in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus gave his disciples the power to heal. Has anybody here got the power to heal? Has God laid his hand on you? Then you've seen God do miracles, right? But at the end of chapter 10, Jesus said, but behold, they're going to come after you. If I give you the power of healing, somebody's going to get jealous. And they're going to come after you, and you're going to have problems. Thomas Jefferson, if people let the government, may I also humbly add, the church, we want to separate church and state, decide what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be as sorry a state as are the souls who live under tyranny. Are we slaves today? This is a free country, but is the world enslaved? It is. Next slide, please. Benjamin Rush was a doctor for George Washington. He was one of the signers of the Constitution. Unless we put medical freedom in the Constitution, the time will come when medicine will organize itself into an undercover dictatorship. Was this guy a conspiratist or what? The Constitution of this republic, church, should make special privilege for medical freedom as well as religious freedom. So we need to indulge freedom of choice for those who disagree with us. My right to believe the way I do hinges on somebody to disagree with me. I told that to my neighbor when I was in Canada. He was a member of Parliament. He took the Religious Liberty magazine and he gave it to every single member of the Canadian Parliament. Religious liberty. If we think we have the truth, then we should be the most benign person on planet Earth in making it available to whoever comes our way. Next slide, please. Let my people go. You know, back there in Egypt, there was slaves. You all said there's slaves today. And what was the answer? Who is God that he's going to let these slaves go free? Next slide, please. Now, you know the story out in the desert. The Hebrew children got to complaining about their pastor. Have they ever complained about pastors? They got complaining about their pastor, and what happened? The ground came alive with snakes and bit them, and people were dying everywhere, and all they had to do was look and live. And today, are we surrounded, this whole world, with snakes? Why is it that the American Pharmaceutical Association, the American Medical Association, the World Health Organization have all chosen snakes as their emblems? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. American Pharmaceutical Association has a golden cup. Does a golden cup ring a bell? With poison in it, with a snake drinking poison out of it. Is that what we need, or have we become slaves again? Who's going to deliver us? Next slide, please. So the Hebrews got bitten by snakes. What are we getting bitten by today? Do we need deliverance? I've heard about nutraceuticals. Did you know charcoal is one of the main cleaning agents for nutraceuticals, as well as pharmaceuticals, as well as very expensive olive oil, and most commercial food, a lot of commercial foods are cleaned with charcoal to take out rancidity or other flavors that we don't want. Next slide, please. Well, our little business in our garage has turned into something much bigger, and this is our second warehouse, and it is full. We could put 3 of these in there. And it's full of charcoal. But on the second floor, we're in a town with less than 1,000 people, and we're going back next week. We're putting on a program for children 6 to 12 called God Made Me, and part of it is how to make a charcoal poultice, how to make a heating compress, how to give a hot foot bath, and how to sprout grains for whole grain food. We're going to do that up in the top floor of one of those wings, and the people in our less than 1,000 people community have said, when are you going to have health classes? They hear about us going to other places, and they're saying, when are you going to have health classes? Everyone here ought to be putting, what an opportunity, Dr. Leela, to be here and gather up this energy. But when we leave here, we're going to be like little coals, right? We got to let our light, what? Shine. Your community, you'll find people in your community here more than willing to work with you. We've had people in our community from the college bring tours through. Teachers bringing kids through. There's golden opportunities waiting for us to witness. Next slide, please. Our disclaimer. We do not believe charcoal cures any disease common to man or animals. Now, you would not expect that from us, would you? Charcoal is a natural remedy that does neutralize, absorb, and or remove thousands of different biological or man-made poisons from the body, allowing the body to better heal itself the way the Creator designed it to. So we make no claims charcoal removes the poison the same way it does in a liver and a dialysis machine. Now, I know there's a lot of nurses and doctors here, but did you know that dialysis machines, one of the filters is charcoal? The liver dialysis machine was developed in Loma Linda, and the blood is actually milked over a bed of granular charcoal. These are for severe I can't even pronounce the word, but they've had cirrhosis, and they're to the point where they're almost vegetative. They cannot communicate. And by putting them on a liver dialysis machine, they're actually able to start communicating. Now, this is an interesting thing because those researchers also said, totally unrelated, this would probably work for brain injury. Next slide, please. This is the surgeon from the Glamorgan Army in UK. This substance has afforded immense relief in numerous cases of open cancer by soothing pain, correcting odor, and facilitating the separation of the morbid structure from the surrounding parts. Next slide, please. It is unnecessary to mention other instances of its use, for in this form, charcoal is now admitted into the London Pharmacopoeia, and it is in general use in all naval, military, and civil hospitals. Did you know that? This was a contemporary of Ellen White. He had never read the Spirit Prophecy, but this surgeon had discovered how charcoal works so well. And one of the things he said was, one of the first things that people comment is their brain fog starts to disappear. They start to be able to think better. Now, I'm not going to get through this program, but let me tell you, because of our business, we have contact with a lot of R&D workers. Recently, we were contacted by the man who developed GIFT. It's a gamete intrafallopian tube transplant, artificial insemination. He developed it. Now he's working on a charcoal a very simple charcoal product for children that have a lifespan of about 3 months. They usually die. He is absolutely convinced that charcoal given to these children will prolong their life. Now he just contacted us and asked us if we're interested in helping him with a $42 million FDA grant for dementia and Alzheimer's. Over the counter. The Swiss pharmaceutical company last year terminated a 6-year research for their premier drug for Alzheimer's because it proved no better than the placebo tests. They had spent $1 billion, but in the discussion with the researchers and developers, they were convinced by the literature that plain charcoal would be an aggressive treatment for Alzheimer's dementia. They've asked us to write an article on this. Do you know what the offending agent is? Ammonia. Ammonia buildup in the brain, which is causing this amyloid buildup that's predisposing people for Alzheimer's and dementia. Wow. And then when you put that together with everything else that you've heard here today for Alzheimer's and dementia and mental illness, it starts to make sense. Now, Dr. Leela, you gave a talk on Adventist World Radio. Do you remember that? When I heard that, I thought, whoa, how is she getting away with this? Did you know? I don't think you did. But when you gave that talk in Texas, the 3 top medical research universities in Texas were working collaboratively on a treatment for COVID-19 using over-the-counter, simple, inexpensive, hospital-grade charcoal. You didn't know that, but you were on the leading edge without even knowing it. That research was pointing to that. Do you have to be wealthy to be healthy? Absolutely not. Next slide. I'm the last one, Dr. Leela. One of the most beneficial remedies is pulverized charcoal placed in a bag and used in fomentations. This is the most successful remedy. If wet in smartweed boiled, it is still better. Now, don't jump to conclusions. Smartweed is not what you think it is. It's something that grows in your garden as a weed, and it's actually an analgesic. And she said if you put a simple herb, we've heard about herbs already, together with charcoal, and in the fomentation, there's hydrotherapy, charcoal, and herbs all together working, and it works like a charm. Next slide, please. I have ordered this in cases where sick were suffering great pain, and when it has been confided to me by the physician that he thought it was the last before the close of life, then I suggested the charcoal and the patient slept, the turning point came, and recovery was the result. Next slide. To students when injured with bruised hands and suffering with inflammation, I have prescribed this simple remedy with perfect success. Now here's the catchphrase. You all need to pay attention to this. The what? The poison of inflammation was overcome, the pain removed, and the healing went on rapidly. Charcoal is known to absorb at least 6,000 plus natural and man-made chemical toxins. So when you hear the word poison, you should immediately think, what? I mean, if it doesn't work, use something else. But if it's available, you want to use charcoal. Poison of what? Inflammation. Now, if you see a word ending in I-T-I-S, itis, what does that mean? It means inflammation, whether it's the pancreas, the bronchial, whatever. It means an inflammation, and something is triggering that inflammation, and charcoal will absorb that poison. It's not curing anything. Don't get me wrong. It's eliminating the poison. Then what happens? The body does what? It heals itself the way the Creator designed it to. Next slide, please. Next slide. I expect you will laugh at this, but if I could give this remedy some outlandish name that no one knew but myself, it would have greater influence. Well, we already read that one. Next. Okay, this is a prison in somewhere in Africa, because I don't want to embarrass the person, but we were invited to a Methodist church, something like this, and we put on a program, and the lady was a physiotherapist. She and her husband went to northern Uganda, or I already told you where it is, and they started a literacy program for the refugees coming back from South Sudan, and they had lost the ability to read or write. So they were teaching reading and writing by reading and writing the Bible. So they were invited into the prisons to teach literacy. In the process, oh, by the way, let me back up. They would start their evangelistic campaigns with a program on charcoal. That's how they drew people to their tent to have an evangelistic series. So they started teaching charcoal in the prisons, and to date there's about 30,000 prisoners in Uganda have learned about charcoal, and they've all gone back to their villages. So the power of one, right? Next slide. This guy here, he was in the men's prison latrine, dying. Now you can imagine what a latrine, a men's latrine in a prison in Africa probably looked and smelled like. The guards said he would be dead in 3 days, and I think there was 6 other men, they would all be dead. But the whole prison had dysentery, including the guards and the prison warden. This guy is pounding charcoal because somebody went in there and gave him charcoal, and he immediately started recovering. Whether it's diarrhea, dysentery, or diarrhea from HIV, which is quite prevalent, cholera, charcoal works for dysentery so quickly. Look at all the soldiers. Look at all the prisoners crowding around to find out what he's doing. Next slide. More prisoners. 1 week, no dysentery in that prison. That woman and her husband were given the ceremonial keys to all the prisons in Uganda to go in and teach literacy using the Bible and teaching charcoal. Now, I could go on, but I'm going to close here. I have some really gross pictures of healing, but we'll leave that to another time. We have a website. The book is charcoalremedies.com. You can go there. There are all kinds of testimonies, research, pictures, and you can send us your stories, and we'd be happy to post them there. It is something you can carry with you anywhere. And if you have not been by our station, come by tomorrow, and we'll be glad to give you some free charcoal and some charcoal sticks to take with you the next time. We were in a church a week ago, and Kimberly walked in, and a person had an insect bite on their arm. It was about that big around and inflamed and red. She put the charcoal stick salve on it, and within 2 days, the swelling was starting to go down, and the color was coming back to normal. Well, let me quit. But let me finish by saying, go ye into all the world, right? All the world. And I started off hitchhiking around the world. I've made it to Australia, not everywhere yet, but this is not my home, folks. It's not our home. We all want to go home, and we want to take somebody with us, right? Amen. And as it's been said over and over again, our health message is the right hand. True and false healing, we are told, is going to bring Seventh-day Adventists to the test. We need to learn how to use God's remedies, and He will bless us. No matter what position we're in, we can deal with the dignitaries of any town or super city. We've dealt with very, very influential people in our little business. We are nobodies. Kimberly and I'm a carpenter plumber by trade. She's a seamstress, professional seamstress. She talks and prays with people almost every day who have health problems. We can all do it. Jesus was a businessman. He said, I must be about my Father's business. We have a business God. And we can be His business minute men and minute women, right? Amen. Well, thank you so much for inviting us, really. Inviting us to be a part of this. I never would have done this. You have been supported by prayers. Never mind. Praise God.